IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to All Things Policy. I am Prasanna Naidu with my colleague Dr. Shri Khanna, research analyst with Takshishila's Indo-Pacific Studies program. And today we are going to talk about Sri Lanka. Like, there are many things, but Shri, when I think about this country, few things come to my mind. One is the tourism industry, because I want to have a vacation there for sure. Let's see when it happens. But two is Ramayan. And three is the LTTE, like the civil war which happened. But there are some other interesting things too, like the one which is currently in news about the Indian fishermen and the Sri Lankan Navy. So, Shri, can you elaborate on this? Like, what's the trouble going on now there?
Thanks, Prasanna, for having me on the show. All those three things you talked about, I hope we will be able to ponder over those three things about Sri Lanka in our podcast today. But importantly, the things which are in recent news, as you talked about the arrest of Indian fishermen. So the arrest of 12 fishermen that were arrested, I think today, and over the 43 others that were arrested yesterday, that makes it to totally 55 fishermen who have been arrested by Sri Lankan Navy. 55 in last 2 days. And this is bound to raise domestic political temperature in Tamil Nadu because of the livelihood issue and the nationalism. But already we have reports that the state's fishermen have said that they are not going to the sea until the arrested fishermen released along with their trawlers. So the situation is developing there. Look, the issue is a permanent irritant in bilateral ties. To me, what is interesting this time is that even before these arrests, Sri Lanka was raising the concern of poaching by Indian fishermen. So last week, an important development happened when Fisheries Minister Douglas Devananda, he took up the issue of Indian fishermen with American Ambassador Martin K. Kelly in Colombo. And because this is a long-standing problem, this was the first time, to my memory, at least, that someone from Sri Lanka had tried to internationalize the issue by involving the US, because essentially this is a bilateral issue. And this time, this fisheries minister, he met with the US ambassador. And now, interesting thing about this guy is that he's one of those Tamil politicians who is not quite friendly with India, because generally when we think of Tamils in Sri Lanka, they have a soft corner for India. But he's not one of those. In fact, there are criminal cases pending against him in India, and he was an anti-LTTE politician since 1990.
Okay.
His current political party, which is EPDP, was a pro-Sinhalese paramilitary outfit during the LTTE insurgency. So he was working along with the central government, the Sinhalese nationalists, during the much major part of the insurgency. And he right now is in alliance with Gotabaya Rajapaksa-led SLPP, and he was made fisheries minister in November 2019. And the fisheries dispute between India and Sri Lanka is necessarily a problem between the fishermen in Tamil Nadu and the fishermen in northern Sri Lanka, which is a Tamil-dominated region. Now, interestingly, his recent outreach to the US has happened in the backdrop of deteriorating US-Sri Lanka relationship since the inauguration of Gotabaya presidency. Relationship has nosedived with his election. And another important development which I see as far as northern Sri Lanka is concerned is the visit of Chinese ambassador to Jaffna. So Kee Zhenhong, he visited Jaffna and made a significant outreach amongst the Tamil in the province. Among the things he did there was the visit to a famous Nallur Kandaswamy temple, where he was dressed as a devotee. He donned a vesti and bare-chested. He offered puja there. And this visit incidentally happens days after the cancellation of proposed solar power plant project in outlying islands of the Jaffna Peninsula. So for the background, in January 2021, Sri Lanka had awarded a $12 million contract to Sinosar, a joint venture, to set up 3 renewable energy projects in these islands. And these islands, incidentally, they are as close as 48 kilometers to the Indian coastal town of Rameswaram. And obviously, India had objected to it and even offered a $12 million as a grant so that India will be able to execute those projects and not Chinese companies. Now, after good 10 months, at least that we get the news that the project has been cancelled. And Tamil community in Sri Lanka, it had objected to the project. And now with these outreach activities by the Chinese ambassador, it seems likely that increasing its influence in Tamil regions of Sri Lanka is going to be a long-term project for the Chinese. They are focusing in these areas. And how far is this ongoing Chinese outreach to northern Sri Lanka and Tamil civil society and politician is contributing to the recent developments that we see, the brewing trouble between Tamils in Jaffna and Tamils in Tamil Nadu? It's anyone's guess. But to me, it's clear that though China's relationship with Sinhali South is in a cooling off period right now, so they are focusing on these northern areas of Sri Lanka, which are not only more strategic for China's plans in the Indian Ocean, but also have quite limited anti-China sentiment as compared to Sinhali South.
Okay. So, Shri, you were talking about growing anti-China sentiment, and especially in the Sinhalese region.
Mhm.
What caused this? And because China is known to have great partnership with the Rajapaksa family, which are Sinhalese nationalists, and they are dominant ruling family in Sri Lanka right now, right?
Yes, you're right, Prasanna. The Rajapakses have a great relationship with CCP. They have promulgated a strategic cooperative partnership, as they call it. And the rise of Rajapaksa brother in Sri Lanka, it essentially parallels the growth of Chinese influence in the island nation. So, for example, it was due to the support that China provided to Mahinda Rajapaksa, who came to power in 2005. So, it was due to that support that Rajapaksa could decisively move against LTTE. And because at that time, the international community, including India, was opposed to the fighting. But Beijing came to Rajapaksa's aid and provided not only critical military equipment like fighter jets, anti-aircraft guns, but also it supported Sri Lanka's cause in United Nations Security Council. And, billions of dollars in development aid was given during this period of civil war between 2006 to 2009. And it was this decisive victory over the LTTE which cemented Rajapaksa's position as great Sinhalese nationalist. And China got plenty in return, right? Whether it was Hambantota Port, which was essentially leased to China for 99 years, or the Colombo Port City project. And there have been reports that China funded Rajapaksa's 2015 presidential campaign. So they are thick. And Rajapaksa's clan, the whole family is now involved in the politics, and their clans wish to dominate the Sri Lankan political setup. And their enchantment with China, we can see that when President Gotabaya Pakshe says that he wants to aim a China-style development model for Sri Lanka, or Basil, or Basil Rajapakse, he says that CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is the model on which SLPP should govern. And consequently, you see, that rise of authoritarianism in Sri Lanka, it has happened.
Hmm.
So they not only take, economic aid from them or military equipments, but also that ideological support they also take from Sri Lanka as far as Rajapakse are concerned. But the ongoing, now coming back to the rise of anti-China sentiment, that's ongoing rise in Sri Lanka, it is not because of Rajapaksa brothers, but despite them, because they mostly have done what was required of them by China. For example, and this is one of the most significant reasons behind the growth of anti-China sentiment among the Sinhalese nationalists, and I'm talking about the Colombo Port City project. So in May this year, the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act, it came into effect. The interesting thing about this act is that it provides for establishment of a economic zone, a special economic zone, and Colombo Port City Economic Commission, CPCEC. Now, according to the Act, the CPCEC has regulatory, managerial, administrative powers in the port city that is being constructed in Colombo. So, and this effectively undermines the position of Sri Lankan Parliament. And basically, it was this act which raised the issue of deliberate cession of Sri Lankan sovereignty to China. They were in, and it created lots of problem for Rajapaksa brothers and politicians there. They were calling it that Port City is going to become a Chinese province or a Chinese colony. And that is, I think, one of those moments from which this anti-China sentiment started building. And because there were protests, protests from Sinhalese nationalists because the issue of sovereignty was online, and this continuous backing of Chinese interest earned him the ire of Buddhist monks as well. And these Buddhist monks are traditional supporter of Rajapaksa and his agenda, his nationalist agenda, his anti-Tamil sentiments, and there was pressure from civil society groups as well. And since then, there is growing anti-China sentiment in this country. Now, last month, it came to news prominently. There was a ship, Hippo Spirit, which was carrying 20,000 tons of organic fertilizer to Colombo from China. And Sri Lankan scientists, they found bacterial contamination, and they refused entry of the consignment. This led to one of a kind situation between the two allies, where Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, it posted on Twitter that it was blacklisting state-owned People's Bank of Sri Lanka for non-payment of the amount. And then there was growing sentiment in Sri Lanka that China may take advantage of the financial muscle and dump the consignment and take the money anyway, because Sri Lanka said it is not going to pay them money. And eventually, according to recent reports, government has agreed to pay 70% of the claim of 6.7 million US dollar that they were asking, because China was threatening to escalate this. And it was in this context that Indian pressure on solar plant project finally worked, and Sri Lanka cancelled the Sinosure project. So, as is evident there, the government is likely to do what China requires it to do, especially under Rajapaksa brothers. But among the Sinhalese nationalists, this anti-China sentiment is growing, and this creates problem for the government, and then they have to, balance it out, or at least try to balance it out.
Yeah. So the last part which you were talking about is like comes under the debt trap policy, which is, sort of talked about when we talk about China and Sri Lanka relations, right?
Right.
Okay. I also was curious about knowing, you were talking the strategic importance of the northern region of Sri Lanka. Why is it strategically so important?
So the northern Sri Lanka is part of Sri Lanka, which is closest to Indian mainland, right? It's adjacent to Indian state of Tamil Nadu. As I said, the project that China was planning, it was approx 40 to 50 kilometers from Indian coastal town. And China gaining territory in that area was a significant strategic concern to India. Also, previously, what China has done is this Hambantota port, it is down in the south. So that part of Sri Lanka, China has significant position there. But in northern part of Sri Lanka, this has not happened as yet, because in Tamil areas there was insurgency problem, and after insurgency problem, they were focusing more on the south. But this area, which is closer to Indian mainland, this is a strategic as far, because it raises Indian threat perception. Also, this is seen in tandem with what they are doing in southern Sri Lanka, or what their plans in Indian Ocean, having to have a two ocean navy. So the more territory that they can gain, and China is known for using these infrastructure building projects for non-commercial purposes. There is that famous case of African headquarters which China had made, and Huawei was the company which had made that. And after some years, I think after 1 or 2 years, it was realized that data was going out in the middle of the night from the African Union's headquarters to somewhere in Shanghai. And then there was a concern there. So because China is involved, is getting itself involved so closer to Indian mainland, it automatically raises threat perception in India. And that's why India raised it so vociferously, and finally it was cancelled last month.
Okay, interesting. So we'll continue this conversation talking more about India-Sri Lanka relations. But before that, let's have a quick ad break.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. What kind of brands do you want to look out for in 2022? Hear great insights from Meeta Malhotra. She's the founder of The Hard Copy, and she joins Varun and Suchita on Think Fast. On GBCD, Farhad and Sunetro are celebrating their 100th episode. They reflect on the journey so far and what this podcast means to them. On Marathi Kirkitun, Dr. Rajiv and Manik Deshmukh discuss human intelligence. On The Habit Coach, Ashton is in conversation with the smile designer Dr. Real Gomez. They discuss various habits around oral hygiene and health. And on Cyrus Says His Cock and Bull episode this week, comedian Abhijit Ganguly, Cyrus, and myself discuss Section 144 being back in effect in Mumbai, Steph Curry's popularity, and a whole lot more. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Go check out our YouTube channels. We go live on a whole bunch of different things. We have a number of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you for making this possible.
We are done with the China-Sri Lanka part, but now let's come to the India's relationship with Sri Lanka. As you talked about the solar power project, which was cancelled, which is a concern to India. So what about India's other concerns?
Well, ever since the change in government in 2019, the relationships has a nosedive. So India's other concern, for example, that there was a tripartite agreement between India, Japan, and Sri Lanka, and this agreement was signed in May 2019 before Gotabaya came to power. It was cancelled in February 2021 by Sri Lankan government, and this agreement was that India and Japan together, they were going to build East Port Container Terminal in Colombo port. So that project was cancelled by the Sri Lankan government. And in the situation, Rajapaksa had utilized the Buddhist monks that I talked about, that close alliance between Buddhist monks. So he had utilized the Buddhist monks who had joined another Rajapaksa ally, labor unions, to protest against the project. And after the agreement was scrapped, administration offered a greenfield Westport container project to India because there were concerns in India. And now with this Westport container project, the difference is that it's a greenfield project, right? India needs to build it from ground up. Whereas the Eastport container, it was already functioning. India just had to, invest in it, scaling it up. So India faced similar pressure tactics with regard to Prime Minister Modi's plan to develop a regional petroleum hub in Trikonamali in northern Sri Lanka. And there was a 2017 MOU between the two countries under which India were to develop 84 oil tanks through a joint venture of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation CPC and Lanka IOC, which is a subsidiary of IOC. And project was facing opposition from the union workers of CPC, which were demanding that the agreement should be cancelled, and they were demanding that the operation of existing 15 oil tanks by Indian Oil Corporation, they should be handed over to CPC. And early this year, Sri Lankan Energy Minister Gammana Pilla, he announced that there is an intention in Gorbaya administration to reacquire all the 99 oil tanks which were leased to Indian Oil Corporation. But the challenges that emerged between Sri Lanka and China, I think those challenges, there has been some change in government's attitude in Sri Lanka. So in August this year, Sri Lankan government appointed a new High Commissioner to India, and an integrated strategic roadmap was announced to restore ties between the two countries. Now, for reference, the High Commissioner post in India was vacant since January 2020. There was no High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India. They said that it is because of COVID. But the appointment of this High Commissioner, Milind Moragoda, was announced in August 2020, but only it was confirmed that he'll be coming to India in August 2021. So this, 1.5 years, there was no one there. Such was the, level of relationship. It had gone there under the Gotabaya and Mahinda Rajapaksa government. And then after this change happened, there were talks of reinvigorating the relationship with, the things that you talked about in the beginning, the common civilization ties, there's Ramayana and Buddhism. So Sri Lankan government, the roadmap document that they put out, they talked of handing over a sacred stone from Sita Amman temple in Sri Lanka for the Ram temple planned in Ayodhya. But to me, what worked was India's continuous displeasure over Sri Lankan activities, as India refused to move ahead on much needed, debt repayment waiver and a separate currency swap for 1 billion, which Sri Lanka was asking for to help it during the economic crisis. And this pressure, I think, helped because India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla, when he visited Sri Lanka in October this year, there was progress on both Colombo Port's West Container Terminal and as well as Trikonamali oil farms. So there was progress. India also bailed out the fertilizer for the island's farmer after, that situation developed with China when Chinese consignment was rejected. Then obviously there was a visit of Sri Lanka's finance minister Basil Rajapaksa to India, where he sought Indian help with the Sri Lankan economic crisis. Now, as you know, this has been in news for quite some time that there is a full-fledged economic crisis going there. The tourism industry that you talked about, which represent around 10% of their GDP and brings in for foreign exchange, it has been hit hard by the COVID crisis, by the whole pandemic situation. And as a
So no
result,
vacations for me now.
yeah,
No
for so, and because this downturn has happened, forex reserves have dropped from 7.5 billion dollar in 2019 to around $1 billion in November 2021. So in 2 years time, the foreign reserves have dropped to pretty low. And then there is a food crisis. The Because of the food crisis, economic emergency was imposed and the army was called in to manage the rationing of food items. There's food shortage, and in addition that organic farming was introduced, as a result of which, the shock that it provided, and situation, many people believe, is can go worse than this. And situation is so bad that the government is planning the lease of government plots in heart of Colombo to get foreign currency. There's such a shortage of foreign currency there.
Why did the situation worsen due to organic farming?
Well, what they did was they unilaterally banned the use of chemical fertilizer, and
Hmm.
they rely on exports. And Sri Lanka does not have a big agriculture base to sustain that their population, right? So what required was, maybe it was, if it could be done in a phased manner, it would have worked. And this was ex post facto added that organic farming will be used to make Sri Lanka the only country that will be totally dependent on organic farming and no chemical fertilizer was used. But one of the important reason why this decision was taken was the same, forex crisis that I talked about, because they wanted to
Hmm.
save that forex reserve, and did not want to import that huge amount of chemical fertilizer. So this idea was projected, but Rajapaksa government had denied it, that they are doing because of this. But most people agree that the reason was that they wanted to save that forex reserve, and wanted farmers to do organic farming. And such a systemic setback when happens, it's not a automatic system that things will fall in. Even under best of circumstances, these things takes time. We know what happened during demonetization. So such a overhaul of system, it takes time. So that also created situation, added to the economic situation in Sri Lanka. So now in this backdrop, there have been reports that India is preparing an economic package to help Sri Lanka on an immediate basis. There were recent reports from some days back. This includes an energy security package, which will include a line of credit to cover fuel imports from India, because they don't want to, pay dollars, and modernization of Trikonamali oil tank farm. It also Sri Lanka is moving in that direction. So India is also going for that modernization. The opposition has been reduced. Also, a swap agreement is in planning to help resolve Sri Lanka's current payment crisis. So there is some change, mostly due to the economic crunch that Sri Lanka is facing, but also an element of using India to balance the dependence on China is also there, which is leading to the improvement in the relationship.
Hmm.
But yeah, coming back now to the first question, the issue of fishermen, I think it will continue to be a problem which will require deft diplomacy from both sides to resolve that situation, because fishermen of both sides are involved and it is a livelihood issue. So it has to be managed.
Right, Shri, I agree. And this fisherman issue is like very old. I have heard about it. Like I had also seen a video about it explaining what this fisherman issue is and how it started and why it started. I'll also share the link of it in the show notes below. And if you are really interested in such topic, then you must definitely check out our 12-week course in Defense and Foreign Affairs. We also have courses in Health and Life Sciences, Tech Policy, and Advanced Public Policy, and a 1-year postgraduate program too. Admissions are now open. Link is in the show notes below. And I think that's it for this episode. Hope this episode added some value to you. Thank you all for listening to this episode. Stay tuned for more new episodes. Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
உங்களுக்கு தமிழ் கதைகள் கேட்க ரொம்ப பிடிக்குமா? அப்படின்னா கதை பாட்காஸ்ட்ல ஒவ்வொரு திங்கட்கிழமை, புதன்கிழமை, வெள்ளிக்கிழமைகளை வெளியாகிற தமிழ் கிளாசிக்கல் நாவல்களை உங்களுக்கு புரியுற தமிழ்ல கேட்டுக்கிட்டே இருங்க. இத IVM பாட்காஸ்ட் ஹோஸ்ட் பண்றாங்க. கேளுங்க கேட்டுக்கிட்டே இருங்க.
Remember the days when our granny used to narrate once upon a time stories? Let's bring back the good old days of moral stories with Storytime Tamil. Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran, host of Storytime Tamil podcast. I would like you to entertain and educate your children with stories from Storytime Tamil. Tune in to the new episode sharp at 7 p.m. every day on IVM website, IVM podcast app, YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast from.